So I'm down to almost everything off the frame. Everything in the front is off, pretty much. I just noticed I have a ground wire there. Right now, I've got the rear spindles jacked up on the bridge jack, and the frame is on 2 jack stands on either side. The problem is, let's see if I can focus in on this better. It's not actually hitting those, and if I lower the bridge jack, pretty sure it's going to tilt. Just knocked a bolt out of the frame. If I lower the bridge jack, it's likely going to tip. So I have a ratchet strap I'm going to put around the front end here and over to the other side of the lift and hold that down so that it doesn't tilt up as I work on it. It's one of the things you got to worry about when you get down to the end of it. And I had this happen on the 74. It gets kind of light on the front, heavy in the back. And I guess maybe, if you take it off in a different order, maybe if you take the rear suspension off first, might not run into that problem, but on the other hand, you might run into the problem of it being lighter in the back and the back end coming up. So depending on what you've got too, you could place the jack stands potentially in a different spot, but on the 4-post lift, you're limited to these ramps. And I can't take them any further inside. They won't be on the ramp. So I got to do with it the best I can. And the best I've come up with is strap it down with a ratchet strap. So there I have it, my ratchet strap holding it on. Now I can go release the bridge jack, and those control arms will drop down. And my goal is to kind of level out the drive shafts for now, the half shafts, so that I can take those off. Once I get those off, we'll probably have less weight to deal with, or less imbalance. So I've made it a little bit difficult for me to work here because it's supposed to rain. It actually has rained, and I don't want to put the tractor out in the rain, so I've fit it behind the lift. It just fits, and I can lower the lift all the way to the ground, but I have to walk around the front of the lift, so it makes everything further away. I'm going to reposition the camera to get a better shot of the half shaft that I'm going to work on. It also has made it a little more difficult for me to get under my lift because I have to go, well, I guess I don't have to, but it just seems like it's a little easier to go under the ramps instead of this little part right here where you have to keep your head ducked down for a total of about 6 inches, whereas if you go under the ramps, you kind of have to duck walk under there. And it's kind of getting difficult to do as I get older. But I guess it's good exercise. So I'm going to try to get focused in on the half shaft, and then I will go figure out what tools I need, come back and turn the video back on and show you how that gets removed. Okay, that's the right side half shaft. also known as the passenger side half shaft. You always refer to parts as you would see them from the driver's seat. And I just now realized that I'm not going to be able to take off these bolts that hold on this U-bolt with the socket because it doesn't look like I can get a socket or a ratchet in there, so it's going to have to be a wrench. I can probably get a socket in there far enough to let me know what size wrench I need. I just realized that I'm making a shadow with because I'm in the way of the light. So those are 9/16 nuts that hold that on, so I can quickly get a 9/16 wrench. Maybe I'll get a couple so that I can have options. I've got a type of kind of ratchets on the nut. Not terribly fond of it, but sometimes it's a convenience. That will ratchet. It does limit the swing that you can get because you can only put it on one way, and like generally speaking, you can take a open end wrench and you can flip it back and forth if you don't have a big swing. This you can't do that because it only loosens in one direction, but if it's a big enough swing, it will actually rotate on that bolt, or nut I should say, or a bolt if it is a bolt. So there are two, oops, the half shaft is spinning. See if I can hold it somehow with one of the extensions I've got. So it'll take a while to do this because of the awkward space of the swing of the wrench. It's going to take a while. So I'm going to shut the camera off, and I will take those two U-bolts off on each side of the universal joint. And again, be careful as you take that U-joint out because you don't want to drop the cap off and have needle bearings go all over the place. So I decided it would be a good idea to loosen all the bolts before I take them out because I don't want to have to deal with it hanging too long, you know, like if this side was out or that side was out. So I'll get them all loose. I tried that with a 3/8" socket. These are 5/8" bolts here, or not bolts, but the head of the bolt. I often say that if I refer to a bolt, I'm usually talking the wrench size you need for it. But I couldn't get them with the 3/8" ratchet. That helped. I can get to the next one. There's 4 bolts holding them on. Not much of an angle, but just enough that you can't get a straight socket in there. I'm not on there yet. Sorry for my head being in the way, but I gotta see if the socket is on the bolt head. And that one came all the way out. Eventually, obviously, they all have to come all the way out, but I want to leave at least one in to hold it up while we're taking those bolts off the other side. I'm going to whip it to the next one. Maybe I'll leave 2 in. I'll leave 2 that are diagonal to each other so that it has a good support while I'm disconnecting the other side. Again, sorry for the head, but I gotta get the socket on there good. And then I'll take this one out completely. It's one nice thing when you have the impact wrench, you really don't have to hold the half shaft from spinning, because the impact wrench isn't putting the kind of leverage on it, you know, way out here to cause it to spin. So I will finish working on the U-bolt here, the other side, and I'll get at least one of those off, and then we'll come back and show you as I take everything apart. Okay, just to show you what I did, depending on how you're trying to work on this, you might have to come up with something different, but I've got a 3/8 inch long extension wedged in the U-joint out near the trailing arm. And then I went around to the front side to loosen it, because on the front side I could pull down on the wrench as opposed to pushing up on the wrench, and that gave me better leverage. I did manage to get a 3/8 inch ratchet with a 5/8 inch socket in there, and I did one of them, but I had trouble getting the ratchet and socket back off. So I decided, and the reason I had done that with the ratchet at first was, if necessary, I could have put a bar on the end for more leverage. But since I had trouble getting it off, I decided to try it with just a wrench, and fortunately that wrench is pretty long, because I don't think I could have done it with a shorter wrench. See if I can see the wrench hanging down there. So, and there's the socket jammed up through the U-joint gap, and it's a 3/8 inch extension because a 1/2 inch was too wide. It wouldn't fit in there. And I just have it up against the bridge jack. Now, you could probably do that and wedge it up against the ground if you don't, you know, if you're working on jack stands, but I don't know. Depending on how high you have the thing lifted, even a 18 inch extension might be too short. So all of my nuts are broken loose now, so I'm going to go take them off, and then we'll show you the last stages of removing the half shaft. So I've been loosening up the U-bolts, and the nuts are loose, but that U-bolt isn't coming off of there. So what I'm going to try is this pry bar, wedging it between the differential and the end of the U-bolt and put some pressure on it. See if I can get that to pop loose. Doesn't want to come. You can't get any kind of a tool in there very well. You know, like the air hammer or anything like that. Because I'm going to try putting some blaster on that. See if that helps it break loose. I don't know whether it's just rust welded where it's on the cap or whether it's in this, rust welded into this yoke. So I guess while I've got the camera running, I'll show you the other side, which seems to be even tighter. Driver's side seems to be even tighter than the passenger side, so I'm going to have to move my camera out of the way here. Let's see if I can break these loose. I've got two of them broken loose. The other two are being really stubborn. It is a struggle getting something wedged in there to keep that half shaft from turning. That one might work. But again, the amount of leverage you can get on this wrench is limited. I'd have to try to strike the end of the wrench with a hammer or something, but there's not much room to get a swing. If you try to put it in there where you've got more room for your hands, seems to be running into the, you know, if you flip the wrench over, it runs into the U-bolt. Well, maybe that's on there pretty good. There, finally got it. That has had blaster soaking it for about 15 minutes. So now I have to try to see if I can find a way that I can get to the nut on the other side and see if I can get that one off. The problem there is, well, okay, maybe I can get it from here. The problem there is one of leverage, because you have to push up on the wrench from the other side. It came. All right, I'll have to work those back and forth, I'm sure, because they are tight and rust is welding them on. But at least they're loose. Well, I've got the camera going. Let's see if the blaster on the other side has done any good yet. I don't know if that's in the way or not, whether you're going to be able to see any better if I remove this bolt that was holding the spring pad on. This is in a different position now because I moved the drive shaft on the other side. No, it's not an easy, good way to get anything in there. Makes it difficult to apply pressure. And as I said, I don't think there's any way of getting a air hammer in there. I'll have to give that some more thought and see what I can come up with to get it out. It will come out. So the air hammer did help get that U-bolt joint, U-bolt loose, but not in the way you'd think. What I did was I used this tip, which is kind of like basically the hammer end of a carpenter's hammer, and I put it right on the spot where the U-bolt was going through the yoke, and just a little bit, and it came loose. Now I've started to make maybe a problem for myself because I loosened it so far that it started to come out now. So it is coming out of the other side too. So I think what I can do is I can remove this U-bolt entirely and it will slip out of the other U-bolt on the other side, and then take the 2 bolts off of the flange that goes to the axle stub over there and remove it. So what that, I guess that's glare from the light on the other side of the shop. Let's see if I can move it in a better way. So there's the flange, and there's the U-bolt. So that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully it won't take too long and it won't be too boring of a video. And remember, I'm going to try to manage those caps on the ends here. The other side, the whole flange comes out, so the U-bolt caps will still be embedded in that. So there's not a problem there. But this side, you have to worry about. You don't want to lose those caps. I don't know whether I'll put new U-bolts or U-joints, I should say, in here or not. I guess this is being a little bit harder than what I thought it would be to take it off. So I guess it's worthy of consideration anyway. Okay, before I take that U-bolt completely off, I'm going to switch the air hose to my impact wrench because I don't want the thing to be hanging down there while I'm trying to figure out how to switch it. I need both hands to do that. So let's take this off. You know what I think I'm going to do? It sounds like it's a good idea. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm going to turn this shaft, or try to. I don't know if I can put it in a position to do that, but if I can, turn this shaft so that that U-bolt cap is supported on the other, I'm sorry, U-joint cap is supported on the other U-bolt, then maybe I'll make it a little bit easier to get this out without spilling needle bearings all over the floor of the shop. U-joints are not that expensive, so I guess it's worthy of considering. I'm getting to the point where that won't work anymore because I can't get the nut in there, or the wrench in there beyond the nut. It's still a little tight. So, open end wrench, flipping it side to side because you can't get enough of a swing. I keep trying to get it off by my fingers because that'd be much quicker if I can do it. Okay, that's off. Okay, now I'm going to take the impact wrench and remove one of the two remaining bolts on the flange. Probably saw the flange move there. And now hopefully I can get, I'm holding that cap on that U-bolt, U-joint I should say. And it's, as you can see, it's resting on the flange over here. And I'm trying to get it in position where I can get the impact wrench on that side. So have to get that on, take the bolt off, hold the half shaft up so that I don't lose the caps from the U-joint, and then dummy, I didn't take the U-bolt all the way off. I guess that's not going anywhere. That's a good thing. I don't know if I have something right handy to pry that U-bolt out with. Screwdriver underneath the gap right here would probably work really well, but right now I don't have a screwdriver. So I'm working it from the back end with this pry bar till hopefully I can get the pry bar in there. Or maybe I'll get it loose enough I can just pull it off by hand. Okay, I'm getting it with the pry bar. You can see the rust on this that was holding it. Locking it into the yoke. Okay, so now that's off. Hopefully I can just lift it out of the other side of the cap. Wheel it through, hold those on, and then I'll go get some tape and tape the caps on so that they don't go anywhere. So there's the half shaft with the U-joint caps taped on. It's just 2 or 3 wraps of black tape to hold them from coming off. Initial inspection of that looks like there's either deterioration in the rubber seal around the cap on one of them, or it's grease leaking out, so I don't know which it is. I will check that out later, and that's actually a decision for later on in the project. Since that was so hard to get out of that yoke, I cleaned it up on the wire wheel, put some oil on it before I'm putting it back so I don't lose it. That should keep it from rusting. And the next time it needs to be taken off, it'll be a little easier. Hopefully that won't be me doing it. So now that that one's off, I will work on the other. I suspect that it's going to be very similar throughout the process as this one. As I told you, I had broken loose the U-bolt nuts, so they're ready to just work them off. There is one thing that I do see that's different on the other side, so I'm going to point it out now. I don't know why it's different, other than maybe the one side was worked on before and this one wasn't. Hopefully once I zoom in on that, that light will be out of the way and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But right here on each side of the flange, there's a C-type thing on there that might be a lock. It feels like there's a tab here that's bent up against that nut so that it can't come off. The other side had lock washers. I don't know which is better, but neither side fell off. So I finally got one nut off after about an hour back and forth. What I did to keep the drive shaft from turning, it worked pretty good. This is actually a tool for doing the door hinge springs, and I was able to insert it, and you could probably use a screwdriver for this too, but I was able to insert it through the U-joint in such a manner that, and now I can't do it. Anyways, it went through the U-joint in a manner that when I was turning it to loosen the nut, it was resting up here and preventing it from turning. And when I was turning it back on, which is hard to do, this was all the way through. If I can get, I don't know how I had it in there now. Went in easy the first time, but it went all the way through. There you go. Went all the way through, and that was catching on the rod that goes between. The name is slipping my mind right now. But one way it would stop it that way, the other way it would stop it up here. So that's how I got it off, by tightening and loosening, tightening and loosening, till it came off. So I've got 3 more to go. They promise to be probably just as stubborn. One thing, let me see if I can show you this. Okay, you'll probably be able to see it. So as I said, right now the handle is up here, and that's preventing the drive shaft from turning the half shaft. So I get it as far as I can. And sometimes that gets pretty tight with all the crud built up in the threads. And what happens is it gets hard to remove. So you need the half shaft held, but, oops. That slipped. But going the other way, apparently this isn't exactly how I had it held in there, but going the other way, it would get wedged against the rod mount. And then I could loosen it. Well, sometimes that got too tight to turn, and this one isn't quite, but let me show you the technique here of interlocking 2 wrenches. Let's see if I can't even see the wrench. Okay, there's the wrench in the middle of the screen. So that's hard to turn now. You can take another wrench, and in this case, you see how it's bent? I needed that bend going up, but you hook it onto that wrench like so, and that gives you more leverage to loosen it. So that is a useful tip. What you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to use that extra leverage when you're trying to loosen it, because if you get that sucker jammed on to where you can't loosen it with that leverage, you're kind of screwed. But if you loosen it as much as you can with just the 1 wrench on it, the extra wrench for the extra leverage will actually make it come off pretty much every time. So I will be working on these. I might have to find a different way to wedge this. Maybe I'll have to wedge it on this side. But you get the point. You need to wedge it somehow so that that half shaft can't turn. That didn't work very well. But point is, you need to find some way to prevent that half shaft from turning. And maybe in this case, a straight screwdriver would work better. A straight long screwdriver. But I had it in one way so that it would resist turning when I was loosening as I am now, and without me doing much to reposition it. once I got this as tight as it would go, I just slip this wrench on it, and I didn't have to do any other repositioning of the thing that was preventing it from turning. See, this is probably going to work in this position, but it's a lot of turning to get to where it resists, prevents the half shaft from turning. What I had set up before, it was only about 1/8 of a turn, and it was stopping it in either direction. But it's a different bolt and it's a different angle, so this might be the best I can do, because it is offset from where it was. So that's what's going to happen for the next probably couple hours, and I'll be working on this one and then the 2 other bolts on, nuts on the other U-bolt, and once those are off, then I'll come back and I'll video what we do to take care of the retainer tabs that are on the flange there. So that's it for now. I'll keep busy. So I did find an easier way to reposition that tool so that it will keep the half shaft from spinning in the other direction. Just turn the half shaft until you get it where you need it. Okay, just like that, and then you can hopefully get the wrench on. Turn it a little bit more. That's another problem. It's hard to get because they have that little ear there. It's hard to get the wrench in there. So that's going to be the routine for as long as it takes for me to get this off. Kind of not fun, but it's what you got to do. I finally found a good way to brace that half shaft so that I could only turn it a little bit and it would hold for me. And what it is, I'm going to have to move the camera here, is up there between the shock mount and the bumper cushion for bottoming out. There's a gap that I was able to put a rod. Now that rod is actually a tool for try and get that light out of the way. It's actually a tool for finding garage door springs. So it just slipped up through there. I'm going to turn this a half a turn and hopefully I can get it up there again. That exposes the 2 bolts. Go through that way. There it is. There's a certain way it's got to go through. Once you get it through there, you get it wedged. That's wedged up at that shock mount area and the bumper. Actually see it right in there. So what that allows me to do is, as I'm working on the bolts on the U-bolts, the nuts I should say on the U-bolts. Okay, I'm going to start working on this one next time because I'm getting ready to quit here. I can turn it. I got to make sure that stays up there. Maybe I need some way of securing that up there because the last time it was kind of stuck and it just stayed there. But at any rate, now that I've got it in there, I can work to loosen that, okay? And then when it starts to stick up and I need to go the other way, it's only going to go a tiny bit. And I still have access to that bolt. And what I think I'm going to try is I've got some clamps. I'm going to try to just put one of those clamps on that rod up above so it doesn't drop every time I turn it. And that should hold it in place. The heck, I'll go do that now. So what I've got is one of these type of clamps, quick grip. And all I'm going to try to do, hopefully I can do it without moving the camera, all I'm trying to do is get this thing up in here, clamp it onto that rod so that every time I move the drive shaft, the rod doesn't fall. And it may or may not work because it's right over the mount for the differential. But that's the plan, to see if I can get that hooked there. And it might actually work because I'm turning the drive shaft and it's not falling. So that should make that a little bit easier to deal with. And then as I'm taking this, you probably can't tell it, but I can get a wrench at that pretty easy, regardless of which way it's turned. And I don't know whether you can tell or not, but the other side, I can probably reach with a wrench from the front of the car. I'm in the back of the car right now, and I won't have to even move that rod. It'll hold that drive shaft from turning, the half shaft. So that's the plan, but that's for tomorrow because it's time for me to go get some dinner. Okay, I've been at this U-bolts on this half shaft for about an hour today, and I've discovered, I think, a couple things. Number one, I brought a ratcheting wrench down from the other shop, the other garage, and much to my surprise, it actually fit on there. So it has made the process quicker. The other thing, after having had those loosened last night I had blaster on them. They were kind of tight again this morning. So what I've taken to doing today is, instead of using blaster after I've got it turning, is just regular 10W30 motor oil and periodically cleaning off the threads as best I can. I can't do very well because I can't get in there from the other side easily, but clean them off to get the crud out of the threads, and then hit them with a little bit of regular motor oil, and that seems to be working for me pretty well. And of course I have it the wrong way, but motor oil, after you get it moving, seems to be like it lubricates it better than the blaster does. So, like I said, using this with a ratchet instead of turning a wrench around every time is a big improvement. I got one off already, and I'm getting close to this one coming off because I can see that the tip of the U-bolt is actually going inside the, I can see the threads in the nut. Actually, this might actually do it this time. That did take a while. Probably spent a good 30 minutes on each one. But patience pays off. I've gotten all of them loose without breaking any bolts or anything like that. I can't get the wrench out because I've got the bolt loose. There we go. Bolt's off. Now, as I was doing this one, it actually loosened up inside the yoke. This one did not. So I'm going to do what I did yesterday, and I'm going to take the air hammer to it with just a flat head on it, like a hammerhead, a carpenter's hammer, and just hit the side of the yoke with it. And that worked for me yesterday. Other side is loose, so I'm going to take out my rod that's keeping it from turning, so I can get a shot at the other side of the yoke. And I can see that starting to loosen already. There's a little gap right there. It's wiggling a little bit, so I probably just need to get something behind there to try on. This isn't big enough, so I'll have to get a different pry bar, which I don't have with me. So I have brought a couple of things to try to pry that loose with. One is this pry bar. I'm going to try to get it between the differential housing and that. I know it's loose because it's moved a little bit. So there we go. The other side came loose just from unscrewing it. So the next thing we're going to address, I'm going to leave those clamps on there. They are loosened. They'll be easy to take off, but right now I want them to hold the half shaft in. What I'm going to do next is take out the bolts that are on the flange. Those are the ones that I've noted before. They have this C-shaped thing that the bolts go through, and then there's tabs on them that are bent over to hold that bolt from turning. So I'm going to try with a chisel to get behind that little tab, and it's probably going to ruin it because it's pretty rusty. And by ruin it, I mean it's going to make it so it's not usable again. I'll make sure I can, but I'll try to get that chisel in behind there and give it a tap with a hammer. It's not going to want to, it's not wanting to cooperate with me. Let's try the top one. Okay, that one cooperated. And I think you probably can see that the tab is free. Now I got to get this other one somehow. It's kind of rust welded to the bolt, so I'm sure I won't be able to get a socket over it without somehow getting that out of the way. Just looking for anything I can catch this chisel on, and it's not happening for me. Starting to come now. Okay, we got behind it. And my half shaft just fell out of the U-bolt on the one side. Good thing I didn't remove the U-bolt completely, or it would have fallen. I'm going to take a minute to put that back into position on the U-bolt. I'll show you what happened. You can see how the U-bolt has fallen out of the, the U-joint has fallen out of the U-bolt. So what I'm going to do is just put this up. There are little tabs right here that that cap will rest on. So I'm going to turn it far enough to get it resting on that tab, and then I'll tighten those back up. I don't want those needle bearings all over the place. So like that, they're on the tab, and I will just get my wrench in there and tighten them just enough so that they're not going to fall out for me. I'll do that, then I'll turn it over, and see, there's a cap already coming out. That cap was trying to come out on me. So we'll tighten that one up. Don't want that falling out. Okay. So that might be a good tip if you're doing it. The job, just, get them loosened and put them back on to hold that U-joint in there so that those caps don't come off and ruin the, or dump the needle bearings all over. Now, the other side, the U-joints are in a flange, and I will show you on the one I took out on the passenger side. And this is why we don't have to worry about losing those caps. They're held in with these clips, and instead of a U-bolt here, you have a flange that holds it. So that is not going anywhere when it comes out. I don't have to worry about that end. So the two other tabs on the other side of that C, they came out pretty easy. So now I can get the impact wrench in there, make sure it's on loosen. That's interesting. The socket got kind of hung up on this part of the U-joint, or drive shaft, half shaft, and I was having trouble getting it out of there. But there's the first bolt out. It's easier on the other side to get the U-joint socket in there. Sure don't want to round that off. At least I know it's loose now. There you go. Got the chisel underneath the socket and tapped it off. Now I'll go get maybe a wrench, since I know I can get it off, and that'll probably fit in there better. I think I've got it turned to a better angle so I can get the bolt out with the impact socket without getting it stuck. There we go. So here's a better look at that device that has the tabs on it to bend over to hold those bolts in. So I have one more of those to remove, and then I'll be taking the half shaft out. One thing I think I could have done to help get this socket in there is to lower that control arm a bit by lowering this bridge jack. If you lower that, the half shaft will be pointing up and give you a little bit more room. But at this point it seems like okay without lowering it. This last one's going to be stubborn for me. I'm going to bend that glass tab a little bit further. That one might be a little difficult. It looks like there's very little room between this part of the flange and the nut. I have to make sure I get that on there good. And you know what I am going to do? I am going to lower that bridge jack a little bit and get some more slant on that half shaft. Okay, what I was able to do is get a straight socket on there. It happens to be a deep one, and I pounded it on to get a good grip. And just an extension gives me enough room that I don't need to have a universal joint on that socket. And that worked. again, the C clamp that holds it on. Now what I'm going to try to do is to take that flange off and rest it on the pad on the bridge jack while I work on the other end. Take off those U-bolts to hold the other end of the half shaft on. They're all off over there. And I wonder if it's because I lowered the bridge jack that it's not wanting to come off. Okay. Got it more level again. I'm going to, let's see if I've got this in the camera frame. Now I'm going to take off the U-bolts one at a time, spin the half shaft, where's my pry bar? Son of a gun isn't wanting to come out. There it is, it was wedged a little cockeyed. Okay. That one is loose enough that I can keep the cup on it and let it drop down. I'll see if we can do the other one. This one's going to have to come all the way out. Sorry if I'm getting in the way there. washer. Okay, so cap is on the other side. Cap's still on this side. Just need to get that U-bolt the rest of the way out. If I can get a screwdriver in between here and pry it out. It's out and on the floor. And the half shaft is out. I will tape those cups onto the U-joint so that the needle bearings don't fall out, and I'll find all the pieces I dropped, and then we'll move on to, I guess, the differential.